Kody Brown has fallen. And this time, there's no coming back. Those were the words blurring across every news channel, every social media platform, every gossip site in America. Kody Brown had been the face of polygamy in contemporary America for years. A man both reviled and adored, respected and mocked, envied and reviled. He created a public dynasty, standing proud with his 4 wives and 18 kids on television nationwide. To some, he was a pioneer. To others, a manipulator. But to all who witnessed today, he was a man broken beyond repair. Kody lay in a stark white hospital bed, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, his once proud golden ringlets matted against the pillow. His eyes, once aglow with fiery confidence, stared blankly at the ceiling. He was unrecognizable. Doctors huddled and whispered among themselves, using terms that chilled his family: nervous collapse, psychological trauma, mental instability. Terms that no one had ever had the courage to affix to the larger-than-life patriarch. The man who had once paced triumphantly across his living room, raking cameras into the faces of his wives, proclaiming his dream of a unified family, was now a brittle shell. He couldn't remain sitting upright without shaking. He couldn't string together full sentences without fog obscuring his mind. He was, as one nurse whispered in sorrow, a broken man lost in his own mind. The decline had been rapid, but not abrupt. Cracks had been spreading underneath the foundation of his empire for years. The sister wives' clan had been constructed on a house of cards, held aloft by jealousy, favoritism, financial pressure, and Kody's constant need to control. Each card fell individually. Christine departed first, leaving with her dignity intact and her children. Janelle, once unflappable and composed, trailed behind her, tired of being ignored and played. Meri, the original wife who had been with Kody for decades, was cast aside, her loyalty discarded like yesterday's garbage. Only Robyn was left behind, Kody's favorite wife. But even she couldn't keep the empire he had lost intact. When the cameras were turned off, and the lights faded on their reality TV success, Kody was left stuck in the very thing he was afraid of most. Silence, no one watching, no one listening, no one to control. And thus, the fall commenced. His temper shortened, his paranoia escalated. Nights turned into sleepless wars in his mind. He raged at the world, and then broke down into sobs that no one identified. His children started staying away from him. His wives, those with whom he stayed in touch, witnessed in a combination of pity and frustration as Kody disintegrated bit by bit, until a night when Robyn caught him walking back and forth, talking to himself, and threatening to walk out into the desert and not return. The ambulance was summoned, and the man who had once held himself like a king was carried out on a stretcher, strapped in for his own protection. But while Kody was going crazy in the hospital, the true storm brewed elsewhere. The courtroom, because while the world witnessed a man shattered, the men and women around him witnessed something different. Business left undone. Decades of deception, secret funds, property complicated by deceit, and above all, the unasked question that hung over each wife, each child, each follower. What now that Kody is no longer in charge? It wasn't money, it wasn't houses or bank accounts. It was survival, justice, and legacy. The longest had been Meri, Kody's first wife. She had been his original partner, the one who had stood by him when there were no cameras around. She recalled the early years of romance, hope of having a family, promises of equality among wives. But in the passage of time, she had become the wife who was forgotten, supplanted by Robyn's youth and privileged position. Nevertheless, she had endured. Now that Kody was removed from authority, Meri stood at a choice. Would she struggle for her portion, or walk away with scars only? Janelle was different. Level-headed, practical, the family peacemaker. She had given more than anyone, worked to help keep the household afloat, raised her children in the background, while others soaked up the limelight. But when Kody put aside her needs, disregarded her struggles, and prioritized Robyn's comfort above her very survival, Janelle's patience was at an end. Now, she wasn't just a mother. She was a woman who wanted answers. Christine, the firecracker, the first one to walk away, was probably the most fearless of the three. She discovered new love, new joy, but Kody's wounds still cut deep. She wasn't there to rescue him. She was there to ensure the truth was told, once and for all. And then there was Robyn. The baby, the last wife standing, the woman whom Kody had put on a pedestal above all the others. To some, the manipulator. To others, a victim in her own right. But one thing was clear. She wasn't going to relinquish her grip on power. For years, she had reaped the rewards of Kody's favoritism. Now, as his legal wife, she would inherit everything. Unless the other wives could convince the judge otherwise. So when that gavel first came down in that courtroom, it wasn't merely the start of a court case. It was the explosion of decades of secrets. The world beyond eagerly waited. The show's fans, the critics of polygamy, legal experts, all huddled around the developing drama. It was entertainment for them. But to the women in that courtroom, it was a battle for survival. Because if Kody's assets and choices weren't disputed, it would all go to Robyn. The houses, the accounts, the property. And Meri, Janelle, Christine, they would have nothing but memories of hurt. For so long, Kody had preached oneness. Now his legacy would be fragmentation. And as he rested in the hospital, suspended between shards of memory and quiet, his wives geared up to confront one another. Not as sisters, not as equals, but as adversaries in a struggle for truth, justice, and liberty. It wasn't merely a trial. It was the burial of a dream that had been fated to die from the outset. This was the downfall of the patriarch. The courthouse was filled to capacity. Journalists crowded the steps leading out, camera bulbs flashing like bolts of lightning, as gawkers strained forward, willing to catch even a glimpse of the Brown family. Security tried to push them back, their cries ringing off the marble pillars of the courthouse. This wasn't just a family argument. This was a public accounting. Inside, the air was heavy, nearly stifling. The wooden benches groaned under the press of reporters, sister wives, fans, and even distant relatives who had driven across states just to see history in the making. The air was charged with tension, humming through the courtroom like a storm ready to unleash. Everyone knew that this wasn't just another hearing. This was the trial that would make history for the Browns for all eternity. Across the room, at the front, the judge arrived, a serious-faced woman, whose decisions were known to be firm. She slid on her glasses and looked out at the room before banging the court to order. The gavel sounded as loud as thunder. Quiet filled the room immediately. On the left side of the room sat Christine and Janelle. Christine was imposing. She wore a navy blue business suit, stood tall, and had sharp eyes. But beneath the composed exterior lay turmoil. Her hands shook slightly as she pushed through a thick binder of folders containing documentation. Each page was a tale of deceit, accounts, emails, even text messages that exposed Kody's favoritism and manipulation. Next to her was Janelle. She appeared different from the woman that fans had seen on TV. Her face was more rugged now, her mouth locked into a clenched line. Janelle wasn't here to be a mediator anymore. She was here to battle. Her arms were folded, but her eyes never shifted from the other side. She whispered every now and then to Christine, but her jaw remained locked, her voice low and contained. Years of pent-up rage appeared to push against her breast, wanting to erupt. Robyn and Meri sat across from her on the other side of the table. Robyn was thin and stubborn. Dark hair surrounded her face, and she wiped at her eyes with a tissue, although no tears had fallen yet. She gripped her purse as if it were a rope to a lifeline, her knuckles strained white against the leather. Robyn had always been Kody's favorite, the one he'd stand up for over everyone else. But that preference, which had once made her so strong, had now turned her into the scapegoat for everyone. And she knew it. Every hushed whisper in the gallery, every glaring set of eyes, seemed directed toward her. To her left was Meri. If Robyn appeared delicate, Meri appeared haunted. She wore a plain black gown, her blonde hair cascading down her shoulders. But it was in her eyes that the true story was written. They were empty, burdened by decades of ignoring and disillusionment. She didn't look at anyone, neither at Christine, nor at Janelle, nor even Robyn. Rather, she gazed at the floor as if she were seeking answers only she could perceive. Her fingers writhed uneasily in her lap. She had been Kody's loyal supporter longer than any other wife, and here she was on the same side as Robyn, the same Robyn who took her place. The irony was biting. The split in the room was so acute, it was physical, like a knife. On one side, Christine and Janelle, joined by hurt, fury, and a common purpose to reveal the truth. On the other, Robyn and Meri, joined not by trust, but by fate. The courtroom was a war painted canvas, and both sides were gearing up to fight. The judge's voice pierced the silence. This court is now in session. We are here to decide the guardianship of Mr. Kody Brown's estate and affairs, as he is currently mentally incapacitated. The court will also hear allegations of financial impropriety, emotional distress, and property division. The words rang out like cannon fire. Christine gasped, and Robyn's lips shook. Janelle was numb, her eyes drawn tight like steel. Meri remained still, her shoulders sinking deeper, as if the burden of the words weighed upon her heart. The attorneys stood up, extending their greetings, but their words were drowned by the feelings building in the air. It wasn't about law, it was about history, betrayal, survival. When Christine rose to speak, the gallery leaned forward as a unit. She didn't look at Kody, because he wasn't there. He was in a hospital bed miles away. She looked instead at Robyn, her voice firm but cutting. We are here because of decades of deception, decades of being pushed to the side, while Kody channeled resources into one home and left the others behind. This isn't about money, it's about dignity, about respect, and about the truth that has been hidden for too long. Gasps coursed through the gallery. Robyn shook her head wildly, muttering to her lawyer, "She's lying, she's distorting everything." The words grated in her own ears, weak, desperate. Then Janelle stood. She didn't scream, didn't weep. Her voice was flat, controlled, like a cutting knife through the tension. For decades I remained silent. I worked. I gave. I kept the peace. But keeping the peace just enabled Kody to keep hurting us. I won't remain silent any longer. Her words strike with a hammer. Across the table, Meri came to life for the first time. She opened her eyes, only for an instant, and looked toward Janelle. There was something in her look, a spark of acknowledgement, perhaps even guilt, but she quickly averted her gaze, her expression hardening into a mask of indifference. The judge held up a hand. "Ladies, this is a courtroom, not a war zone. We will hear testimony, we will hear evidence, and we will render a decision on the basis of fact, not feeling. But rest assured, this court will find out what happened." The gavel rang out once more, sounding as if it brought death. The Brown wives leaned back, but their faces were the truth. This was not a family. This was war. Christine's eyes flashed with resolve. Janelle's jaw set with determination. Robyn's hands trembled, her tissue finally damp with tears. And Meri? Meri closed her eyes, her lips just the faintest whisper, as if saying a prayer under her breath. The courtroom split down the middle, battle lines drawn, and with Kody helpless in a hospital bed, the women who once lived within his walls now readied themselves to annihilate each other in their quest for justice, freedom, and survival. The storm had raged to life. The courtroom was quiet, the air thick and heavy, each breath acrid, as if the whole room was restraining itself from unleashing chaos. The gavel of the judge rang out again. "We will receive testimony from the plaintiffs. Mrs. Christine Brown, come forward to the stand." Christine stood, the papers gripping her fists. For an instant, her legs shook. The years of pain weighed heavily on her shoulders. But she stiffened and proceeded. She had imagined this moment, not because she desired retaliation, but because she desired the truth to be revealed. Seating herself on the witness stand, Christine fiddled with the microphone. She glanced toward the gallery, where reporters eagerly leaned forward. But then she looked to her children seated demurely in the back pew. They supported her. She took a breath, steadied herself, and spoke. "Kody manipulated us," she started, her voice trembling at first, but finding renewed strength in every sentence. "He presented a facade for the cameras, a facade of unity, love, and fairness. But behind closed doors, it was all a fabrication." Gasps spread throughout the gallery. Christine waved a folder. "Here are bank statements. Evidence that while Janelle and I were scrambling to pay bills, Kody spent thousands on Robyn's house. He said we were equal, but he played favorites. He had us scrounging for leftovers, while Robyn and her kids lived well. Robyn's face whitened. She bent forward to her attorney, speaking frantically in a whisper. That's not true. She's distorting it. But her voice trembled, revealing her terror. Christine went on. This wasn't about money. This was emotional abuse. When I pleaded for help, when I requested time, he turned away. He said I was ungrateful. He said I didn't deserve better. For years I was silent because I wanted to hold the family together. But silence only broke me. Her voice rose, breaking slightly. I'm not here to destroy Kody. I'm here to protect my children and my dignity. He broke his promises. He broke our family. And now the truth has to come out. She set the papers down firmly. I rest my testimony. The room buzzed with murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge had to bang the gavel twice to restore order. Then the judge's gaze moved. Mrs. Janelle Brown, come up here to the stand. Janelle rose slowly, her stance firm but her eyes burning with an inner flame. She wasn't hysterical like Christine, but her level calm was equally compelling. She had nothing in her hands. No papers, no props, just herself. I am Janelle Brown. She started softly. For years I kept this family running. I worked, I paid the bills. I fed our kids. I believed in the dream. Kody promised us that we would be equals, that we would create something strong. She sat quietly, hands clasped in her lap. But Kody didn't desire equality. He needed control. When I questioned finances, he shut me down. When I questioned his decisions, he said I was being disloyal. When I attempted to get heard, he shut me up. And when Christine left, he lashed out at me. Her tone grew piercing. This isn't about money. This is about respect. He made us feel less than nothing. He made us feel like weights. And now he's in a hospital bed. And we're sitting here struggling to unravel decades of harm. The courtroom fell silent. Every hearing strained on her next words. Why do I look for it? Janelle queried, answering before the question could be asked. I look for acknowledgement. I look for fairness. And I look for release from the darkness. Kody made us endure. She leaned forward, her gaze meeting the judge's. This is not about punishing a sick man. This is about ensuring that when he is dead, the women and children that he disposed of are not left with nothing. We deserve better. The judge nodded solemnly. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You may be seated. And then quite suddenly, the silence was shattered. Robyn sprang to her feet, tears running down her face. That is enough, she shouted, her voice shaking. You don't know. He loved us all. He did everything he could. And now you're trying to destroy him when he can't even defend himself. The judge pounded the gavel. Mrs. Robyn Brown, you will have your say. Sit down. But Robyn shook her head, crying openly now. They're making him out to be a monster. But he was a man. My husband who loved all of us. He didn't do everything right. But he tried. And you want to rip him apart when he's in a hospital bed? This isn't justice. It's cruelty. The courtroom exploded into commotion. The audience hissed angrily, some in support of Christine and Janelle, others mumbling for Robyn. Journalists jotted down notes more quickly. Cameras flashed. Throughout, one person kept silent. Meri, the judge, finally re-established order and faced her, Mrs. Meri Brown. You've remained very quiet. Do you want to testify? Meri stopped. Everyone looked at her. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. She had lived in the shadows for years. Her loyalty tried, her love cast aside. She was the first wife, the one that had begun all of this with Kody, but yet had become the most forgotten of them all. She climbed up slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. I was Kody's first wife. I believed in him when nobody else did. I weathered every storm with him. And how did he return that? He shattered me well before he shattered himself. Her words sliced through the silence like a blade. Meri's voice shook. But she continued. He left me. He embarrassed me. He acted as if I didn't exist. For years I tried to believe that loyalty was remaining silent. But the thing is, that silence killed me. She redirected her gaze to Christine and Janelle. They're true. He hurt us. He put scars that no one can see. Robyn gasped, holding her chest as if Meri's words had pierced her. Meri's eyes overflowed with tears. I don't hate him. I still love him. Part of me. But I can no longer shield him from harm. The truth has to come out. The courtroom was frozen in time. Even the judge reclined. Her eyes narrowed in concentration. The room was silent. Christine's hands shook. But there was relief in her face. Janelle nodded quietly. Robyn sobbed uncontrollably, shaking her head as though trying to erase Meri's words. The judge finally spoke, her voice low and firm. This court has heard years of silence break open today. What lies ahead will not be easy, but the truth is no longer hidden. She banged the gavel once more. The room burst, reporters spilling out to reveal the news. Hushed tones flying, tears streaming. The secrets were out, and for the first time in decades, Kody Brown's wives stood not in shades of secrecy, but in the harsh light of truth. The courtroom was silent, so silent that even the scratching of a reporter's pen seemed deafening. The air hung thick, heavy with the weight of everything already said. Christine's fury, Janelle's resolve, Robyn's desperate tears, and Meri's fragile whisper that had cracked the foundation of the entire case. The judge leaned forward, eyes fixed on Meri. Mrs. Meri Brown, she said, her tone softer now. You may continue your testimony. Meri's hands trembled as she gripped the wooden railing of the witness stand. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her eyes locked on the floor. Her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. The room waited. Everyone knew Meri's silence was not weakness. It was the sound of years of suffering trying to find words. Finally, she lifted her gaze. Her eyes were wet, her voice breaking. I was Kody's first wife, she started. When I got married, I thought I was his partner, his equal. I thought I was the foundation of a family that would last forever. He vowed me love. He vowed me respect. He vowed me forever. She took a deep breath, her lips quivering. But forever ended the day that he stopped seeing me. Christine shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her own eyes glassy. Janelle leaned forward, hands tightly clasped. Even Robyn, who had protested moments before, appeared transfixed, her tears abandoned as she watched Meri fall apart in the court. Meri went on. I begged for crumbs of attention for years. Years of seeing him show affection to others, while I just hung in the background. Do you have any idea what it's like to be invisible in your own marriage? To sit at the same table, to live in the same house, but to be treated like a stranger? Her voice broke, and she put a shaking hand to her chest. I was humiliated. I was rejected. He told me, his decades-long wife, that he no longer wanted a relationship with me. He didn't even attempt to conceal it. He said it like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. The courtroom murmured, shock spreading through the crowd. Reporters wrote furiously. The judge rapped her gavel once, calling for silence. But Meri persisted, her hurt pouring out in surges. And yet, I remained. I remained. Because I had faith in family. I remained because I thought suffering quietly was devotion. I remained because I wanted my son to think his parents could transcend egotism. But quiet isn't devotion. It's self-demolition. And it wrecked me long before it wrecked him. Her shoulders shook now, tears running freely down her face. Across the aisle, Christine covered her mouth, fighting back sobs. Janelle's hand pressed to her chest, as though the weight of Meri's words was too much to bear. Robyn, trembling, whispered under her breath, stop, please stop, as though each word was another knife, stabbing into the illusion she had clung to for years. Meri's voice dropped to a whisper. I wanted to believe Kody was going to change. I wanted to think that love could fix what was broken. But he never did. And now he's in a hospital bed. And I'm still carrying around scars that nobody can see. Her words hung in the air, like smoke in every corner of the courtroom. The judge settled back into her chair, her face immobile. But her gaze rested on Meri with something gentler, something akin to compassion. Mrs. Brown, the judge asked softly, are you alleging that Mr. Brown emotionally abused you? The room fell silent once more. Meri hesitated, her mouth opening. For an instant she looked like she would retreat. But then she nodded. Yes, she whispered. He did. He didn't hit me. He didn't scream at me. But he broke me. Piece by piece. And that is its own kind of violence. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even shouts from the gallery. The judge's gavel slammed 3 times. Order! This is a court of law. There will be silence. But the damage was done. Meri's words had pierced the courtroom like lightning. Christine leaned toward Janelle, whispering, I never thought she'd say it. Janelle nodded, her jaw tight, tears threatening to spill. Robyn stood abruptly, shaking her head in disbelief. No, she cried out. That's not true. He loved you. He loved all of us. Her voice cracked, desperation dripping from every word. You're rewriting history. Because you're angry. You're all just angry. The judge directed a finger at Robyn. Mrs. Robyn Brown, sit down now, or you will be escorted out of this courtroom. Robyn leaned back into her seat, every part of her body shaking. But Robyn had been hurt too. Because Meri's truth had undermined all that Robyn had said about the love and devotion of Kody. Meri dropped her folded hands and fell silent, her testimony complete. But her words hung like specters in the courtroom, echoing in each corner. The judge at last snapped the silence. This testimony presents a profoundly unsettling picture of Mr. Brown's life as husband and patriarch. This court does not lightly accept charges of emotional abuse. She glanced over the room at Christine, Janelle, Robyn and Meri. This is not about one man in a hospital anymore. This is about the legacy of damage he leaves behind. And this court will make sure that damage is recognized. The gavel came down again. The wives sat quietly, each engrossed in their own tempest. Christine gazed straight ahead, her tears drying into tough resolve. Janelle clutched her knees, breathing steady but labored. Robyn buried her head in her hands and whispered, This can't be happening. This can't be happening. And Meri? Meri shut her eyes, as if letting go of decades of anguish in that one witness. For the first time, she had spoken her truth. For the first time, she was no longer invisible. The courtroom, which was once divided, now resembled a graveyard, seared by the facts that had at last been brought to light. The explosive testimony had shattered delusions. The judge had heard enough to realize the family for what it truly was: broken, bruised, and betrayed. The question now was not whether the Brown legacy would collapse, but how. And the answer would be with the final verdict. The gavel came down once, crisp and authoritative. Order in the court. The judge declared bluntly. We are here today to conclude this case. One that has uncovered decades of secrets, betrayals, and wounds that never healed. The room was silent. Wives leaned forward with pounding hearts. Christine's jaw was set. Janelle's hands were clasped tightly. Robyn shook her head in refusal. And Meri sat with her eyes closed, ready for the final punch. The judge's gaze swept across the courtroom. We began this case with Mr. Kody Brown hospitalized, unable to stand trial, due to his psychological state. Some might say that was misfortune. Others might say it was consequence. But what has unfolded here is bigger than one man's illness. What we've heard, through your testimonies, is the truth of a broken system. One where power was abused, and love was twisted into control. She paused, allowing her words to settle in the room. Christine Brown, she addressed her directly. You spoke with passion and conviction. You testified to years of neglect, manipulation, and deception. Your words portrayed a pattern of conduct that undermined trust, safety, and respect. Christine's throat constricted, her fingers grasping the bench's edge. Janelle Brown, the judge went on, turning her eyes away. You brought sense and rationality to this courtroom, exposing the financial dishonesty that ensnared you and your children in patterns of instability. You taught us how control was wielded, not just through words, but through money and dependency. Janelle blinked fiercely, her face pale but dignified. And Robyn Brown, the judge commanded harshly, her keen eyes snapping toward her. You defended him. You held on to loyalty, proclaiming he loved you and loved his family. But loyalty without truth is not justice. You might have felt his love was genuine, but belief does not destroy evidence. Belief does not destroy harm. Robyn's lips quivered, tears running unchecked. She shook her head, silently mouthing, "No, you're wrong." Last but not least, the judge's eyes warmed as she faced Meri. "And you, Meri Brown, you were the first to be at his side, and the last to finally speak up. Your words were perhaps the most difficult to hear, because they were the most silent form of abuse, the kind no one notices. Emotional abandonment, rejection, isolation. These hurts do not leave any bruises, but they linger longer than any backhand. Your bravery in speaking here today will reverberate far beyond this courtroom." Meri bent her head, tears streaming down. For the first time, she did not feel insignificant. The judge sat back, her tone firm and serious. "Thus it is decreed by this court. All jointly held property, wealth and bank accounts, under the name of the Brown family shall be severed and divided fairly between the wives and their offspring. The custody of children under the age of majority shall reside with their mothers, with access as shall be ordered in the best interest of the children, not Mr. Brown's convenience." The words fell like thunder. Christine sucked in a harsh breath, tears streaming down her face. Janelle breathed slowly, relief crossing her face. Meri slumped, as if decades of pressure had been removed. But Robyn gasped, grabbing at her chest. "No!" she exclaimed. "You can't do this! Kody constructed this family, gave everything to us. This isn't right." The gavel came down. "Mrs. Robyn Brown, that's enough. This court is not here to maintain illusions. It is here to maintain justice." The gallery burst into whispers, journalists scribbling madly, cameras popping. The downfall of Kody Brown was no longer personal. It was public. The judge's voice softened, nearing tears now. "This is not a case about breaking a man. It is a case about releasing the men and women who are held captive by him. Mr. Brown's hospitalization is sad, but it is symbolic as well. A man who so desperately tried to control so many cannot even control himself anymore. That is the price of unbridled pride, unbridled power, and unbridled neglect." The courtroom sank into hush once more. The burden of the decision weighed upon them all. Christine put a hand over her heart, muttering to herself, "It's over. It's finally over." Janelle took Christine's hand, holding it tightly. "We made it," she whispered, her voice shaking. Meri remained motionless, silently crying down her cheeks. But for the first time in years, those tears were not the product of invisibility. They were tears of release. Robyn, though, shook her head in a furious denial. She faced the gallery, faced anyone who would hear her. "He loved us. He loved me. This is not justice. It's betrayal." Her voice cracked, her desperation seeping into every word. But no one replied to her screams, not even the other wives. The judge rose. "This court acknowledges the damage that was done. And today this court pronounces the Brown family kingdom, as it once stood, is dissolved. From today on, all of you are free to construct your lives, not as shadows beneath a man's dominion, but as individuals who are worthy of dignity and peace." She brought the gavel down for the final time. "Court is adjourned." The echo reverberated like a gunshot. Christine collapsed into tears, sobbing into Janelle's shoulder. Janelle, though shaken, held her tightly, whispering, "We're free. We're finally free." Meri sat frozen, staring at her folded hands. Slowly she lifted her head, her eyes wet but shining. She whispered to herself, "I'm not invisible anymore." Robyn sat frozen in her seat, shaking as if the earth had opened beneath her. Her lips shook, but she couldn't speak. For the first time, she was completely alone. Reporters flooded out, phones ringing, headlines already being written. The fall of Kody Brown. Sister wives court battle ends family empire. Judge hands down verdict against polygamous patriarch. Wives walk free. From TV fame to courtroom shame. The Brown family's final collapse. Outside the courthouse, the wives grouped together. Christine wiped at her tears, her face smeared but radiant with relief. Janelle draped an arm across her shoulders, solid and unflappable. Meri was a little apart, but tonight she didn't blend into the shadows. She set her chin, the sun catching her tear-streaked face. And Robyn? She trailed behind, holding on to her purse, her gaze darting as if for someone who would still stand up for Kody. But there was no one left. The cameras panned in as Christine moved forward, telling reporters softly, "This wasn't about us, it was about the truth. And the truth is, no family can survive on control and lies. We deserve better. Our children deserve better." Janelle nodded resolutely. "This verdict isn't the end, it's the beginning. We're free now to construct lives that respect honesty, honor, and love." Meri's voice, quivering but unshakable, supplied the last note. "For years I remained mute. Today I spoke. And I shall never remain mute again." The crowd exploded in questions, cameras popping, but the wives turned and disappeared. Free and together. Back at the hospital, Kody Brown lay unconscious, alone in his own struggle with the mind that once ruled over so many. His empire was lost. His wives were lost. His legacy was lost. And for the first time in decades, the sister wives were not his. They were their own.